The last part, our last session is about transformation. This is how we become.
Transformation is not a single spark, but the rhythm we return to. Practice of showing up again and again with care, courage, intention. We are called to become more than makers, to be thinkers, shapers of systems, stewards of possibility. By holding the whole, we reclaim design not just a tool, but as a way of being with each other, with the world.
Our speaker kicking off our session, Become, has shaped the way the world thinks about business and design. As co-founder of Strategy Horizons LLP and co-author of the groundbreaking book, The Experience Economy, he has produced one of the most influential frameworks in modern business thinking, redefining how brands can impact the lives of their consumers. Please welcome on stage, Joe Pine.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. And it is a pleasure to be with you this afternoon after such great sessions that we have had today. And to talk to you about become and what does become mean. And the key thing is, in fact, flourishing. What a beautiful word and what a wonderful concept, flourishing. Academics trace it back to the Greek philosopher Aristotle in the 4th century BC, who talked about eudaimonia, the Greek word for flourishing, and that it was the highest good, and that it's what people should strive for in their lives. But long before Aristotle, and I think it's something that presages what we see surrounding the stage today, but a psalmist wrote in the book of Psalms that the righteous flourish like the palm tree. They are ever full of sap and green. And that's what flourishing is about. There's been a renaissance in the idea of flourishing over the past several decades, with academics, particularly in positive psychology, thinking about what it means to flourish. And often they have a set of lists, and each one has different lists about if you match 5 of these 7 things, then you're flourishing in that. And I don't think that's a very good, really, definition of what flourishing is. So let me give you a simple definition to think about flourishing. Flourishing is the extent to which each one of us is the way we are meant to be. I mean, that's what flourishing is. How high are you on the scale of being who you are meant to be? That's what flourishing is about. That's what we need to design into our offerings, is that level of flourishing, and to help people become flourishing. In fact, that's what business is all about. The reason for existence, the raison d'etre of businesses, is fostering human flourishing. That's what capitalism before, and is what's always been about, is helping people flourish. People only ever buy your economic offering, whatever it is, if they think it is worth more to themselves than the money in their wallet or their purse or their account. And so they are buying from you because it helps them flourish. It helps them grow. It helps them become who they want to become. That's what flourishing is. That's the reason for existence. And when you recognize that, and recognize that capitalism and every business, its reason for existence is human flourishing, then you can think about your own business and how you help people flourish through your own economic offerings. I think strongly that businesses need to have their own individual purpose, the reason why you exist in the world beyond making money. Right? What is that reason why you exist in the world? Right? It's not about money. Money, profit, is the measure of how well you fulfill your individual business purpose. Right? You need to understand what that is and what it might be, and how that business purpose then helps you foster human flourishing in each one of your individual customers. But it's not just about your customers. It's about the collective flourishing that we can have overall. When you think about it, it's about your employees and your organization. How do you help your employees flourish so that out of that, their own flourishing, they can help your customers flourish? And when you've got your customers flourishing, your employees flourishing, then you can't help but have your community be flourishing as well. And so think about the flourishing that happens in your communities and how that then ripples out and it extends. It extends beyond just the individual community to the entire society, to the entire country, and then extends out to the global planet. Right? So every time you help an individual person flourish, right, that ripple can extend out to help other people flourish, to have a real impact in the world today. And that's what we need to do. We need to think about how we impact that world so that we all flourish as human beings. I'll give you an example of that here in the Philippines. There are several people actually from Minnesota, where I live in the U.S., that came over to the Philippines as Christian missionaries. And they worked with people, and they were in some of the southern islands of the Philippines, and they understood how impoverished many people were and how to help the family actually live and exist at all. Many of them would in fact sell their daughters into sex slavery. And it broke their hearts. And they thought, well, how can they solve this problem? Obviously, you can't solve it for everybody everywhere, but how could they solve this problem for the community in which they were ministering to here in the communities? And they did the best thing possible. They created a business, right? Not a nonprofit, but a for-profit business. They worked with the community where some people farmed the coconuts. That was the biggest crop that they had down in that arena. And then they created a manufacturing company to be able to turn those coconuts into coconut oil. And they call it Dignity Made, recognizing that one of the things that work does is it gives us dignity as human beings. In fact, when you buy their coconut oil around the world, it comes with a QR code, and it tells you the story about an individual person that works in that factory and what a difference this work makes for them. Right? It's a difference in flourishing. And other businesses have grown up around the factory. Restaurants to be able to provide people lunch and dinner. Supermarkets to be able to provide them goods that they can buy with the money that they've made. Distribution companies that can ship the coconut oil around the world. And all of that is thinking about the collective flourishing that has resulted, right? Because they got into the business of human flourishing. This is the progression of economic value, and every time somebody buys an offering, it is an impact on human flourishing. And economists recognize really only three types of economic offerings: commodities, goods, and services. Commodities are the things that you grow on the ground, pull out of the ground, and raise on the ground, extract them out of the ground and sell them on the open marketplace, the basis of the agrarian economy. Then along came the Industrial Revolution, and we created an industrial economy based off physical goods, the things that we touch and feel. And then in the 20th century, along came the service economy, where you take those goods and you deliver them as a set of activities for individual people. But what's happened in the 21st century in particular is that goods and services are being commoditized. Commoditized meaning they're treated like a commodity where people don't care who makes them. They don't care about the brand and the features. They're all pretty much the same anyway. They care about three things and three things only: price, price, and price. That's when goods have been commoditized. And increasingly services as well. Right, are being commoditized, where people buy them based off of price and convenience. Right, so that means we have to innovate and do things differently. How I originally discovered this progression of economic value was my first book on mass customization, about giving everybody exactly what they want and at a price that they're willing to pay. And I recognized that customization automatically turns a good into a service. And I asked, well, what happens next? What does it turn a service into? Right? Customization is the antidote to commoditization. And if you think about what it turns a service into, if you design a service that is so appropriate for this particular person, exactly the service that they need at this moment in time, then you can't help but make them go, wow, and turn it into a memorable event. Turn it into an experience. And the thing to understand here is recognize that experiences are a distinct economic offering. as distinct from experiences are as distinct from services as services are from goods. Basically, we use goods as props and services as the stage to engage each and every individual in an inherently personal way and create a memory which is the hallmark of the experience. So as my partner Jim Gilmore outlined in our book, The Experience Economy, we have now shifted into an experience economy where experiences are the predominant economic offering, that experiences are what consumers want today over goods and services. In fact, people want goods and services to be commoditized, to be bought at the lowest possible price and the greatest possible convenience in order to spend their hard-earned money and their hard-earned time on the experiences that they value. But experiences can be commoditized as well. In fact, the second time you have an experience doesn't tend to be as good as the first, the third time not as good as that. And when your customers say, been there, done that, that's the hallmark of a commoditized experience. So using the same heuristic with customization as the antidote to commoditization, what happens when you customize an experience? What happens when you design an experience that's so appropriate for this particular person? Exactly the experience that they need at this moment in time. Well, then you can't help but turn to what we often call a life-changing experience. An experience that changes us in some way. And that is a transformation. A transformation is the fifth and final economic offering in this progression of economic value. We're using experiences as the raw material to guide people to change, in particular to help them achieve their aspirations. I mean, think of why do people go to fitness centers and endure all that work, sweat, and pain? Because they think the gain will be worth it. They want to become more fit. That's what their aspiration is, and they're hiring the fitness center to help them do that. And the experiences that they have there can help them go from flabby to fit. Or why do people go to psychiatrists and pay several hundred US an hour only to be asked, well, what do you think? Because I think they'll become better in some way. And why do people go to school? Think about higher university and often pay thousands and tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a degree, whether a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. Why do they do that? It's not for the ideas, the commodities of the environment. It's not for the physical books and other gear that they buy. It's not for the homework analysis and information services that professors provide. Right? It is for that classroom experience and overall the greater networking experience that you have in college or university. But fundamentally, they go because of being transformed. That they want different skills, they want different capabilities, they want a different career, they want to be a different person. One business school that recognizes that is the London Business School, where the former Dean John Quelch once told Fast Company magazine that we're not in the education business, we're in the transformation business. We expect everyone who participates in the program at the London Business School, whether it's for 3 days or for 2 years, to be transformed by the experience. That's a different mindset. And it's a different economic offering. It's a different business that you can be in. And many businesses are in the transformation business. Think about the rise of coaching over the last several decades, right? Whether it's a golf coach or a tennis coach or a life coach, an executive coach, a fitness coach, right? There are coaches, there are guides, there are experts, there are shamans, there are counselors, there are therapists, there are navigators, there are advocates, right? All of these are all coaching things. No coach ever exists, is never hired unless somebody has an aspiration that they're having trouble achieving by themselves. And they're looking for other companies to be able to help them. It applies to B2B as well, not just consumers. BetterUp is a coaching platform that works with organizations to figure out who's the best coach for each particular person in your organization and allow them to connect online and go through a coaching process that the business is paying for. And I love this example. Flavorman is a company, it's like you, they're designers. They design beverages, whether they're sodas or craft beers or spirits, whatever it may be. And they decided to get in the transformation business, not just the service business of designing. And so they created what they call Moonshine University, right? Sort of tongue-in-cheek, moonshine being illegal alcohol. But of course, everything in their design is legal. And people pay $6,000 for a program where they learn how to get into the business of craft beer, for example, or of spirit making. And they're creating their own clients. So half of the people that go through the Moonshine University actually then hire Flavorman to help with the flavors that they have as well. Right? A transformational program that they are created for B2B. In Poland, every September, there's a College of Wizardry. it's sort of like Harry Potter, right? You're familiar? Everybody know Harry Potter, right? It's sort of like that, but they can't ever use the term Harry Potter, right? It's not Harry Potter, it's wizardry. Just want to make that clear. But they had such great experiences. They did such a great job with this that people wanted to learn how they could design experiences as well. Right? Experience design is the biggest growing field in design. So they actually created the College of Extraordinary Experiences. I was a part of it in the first year they did, where they bring together people and help turn them into experience designers, right? A transformation that they undergo. Revivo is a wellness retreat in Bali, in Indonesia. And Revivo means I live again in Latin. And they want you to go through a personal transformation journey when you go there. And so they actually ask, get this, an 80-question survey before you come. So they can design a customized wellness journey for you, looking at not just physical needs, but mental needs, emotional, relational, health needs. And so that over the period that you are at this resort, that you can transform your life through the techniques, through the experiences that they take you through there. In fact, transformational travel is the biggest growing area of both the transformation economy and the travel industry. The people are going places to be able to be transformed. One company I help advise is the Transformational Travel Council, and that work not just to help consumers be transformed, but help the destination as well be transformed by the work of the consumers there. So they work on that destination flourishing, not just on the individual consumer flourishing. And they have their own manifesto, and I love just the first line of this. Travel is pregnant with the possibility of transformation. If you think about it, when we travel, when we get out of our normal daily lives, is when we open ourselves up to new possibilities, to new places, to new vistas, to new experiences. And it's when we are most open to transformation is when we travel. You think about travel, it perfectly exemplifies this progression of economic value. Originally, back in the olden days, right, we traveled just to see places, right? And so the place was basically a commodity. Land is a commodity. And we'd go there and see that land. But in order to do that well, we'd have to take along all this gear with us, right? Our clothing, our suitcases, our accessories, and so forth. Right? So companies came up to supply that. And then you have services, hotels and motels and other services, restaurants and that we take part of when we travel. But it's really about that overall experience. You see the rise of much more experiential hotels and other experiences that we have at these destinations. But often then it allows us to transform. And increasingly again, people go to travel. They go to the Camino de Santiago, for example, in Spain, looking for that transformation in life, looking at what is missing in their life, looking at how they can improve their life, looking at how they can better flourish. And that's what transformation is truly about, is better flourishing. If you think about what businesses are in the transformation business, well, there's an old English proverb about being early to bed and early to rise, right? Makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? Healthy, wealthy, and wise, those are all transformation industries. But they aren't alone, right? If you think about it, health, it's not just about being healthy, it's about having health and well-being. Health is generally, if you think about healthcare, it's the biggest transformation industry in the world is healthcare. But it's mostly about recovering from negative circumstances. I want to go from sick to well. I want to go from injured to whole and so forth. But also we're increasingly looking for well-being, positive aspects of ourselves that are more directly tied to flourishing as a result. Financial services about wealth is a huge industry around the world as well. But wealth is about money, and money is the means to an end. What's the true end to which we want to use our money, and that's being prosperous? And think about being prosperous. I love the Jewish word shalom, right? It means peace, but as a greeting, Jews would say shalom, shalom. It really means have a nice life, have a prosperous life. It's what we do with our money that makes us prosperous. And we can be prosperous without a lot of money, right? Depending on how we approach life and what we do. We can flourish even with no money, basically, if we are who we are meant to be. And then another huge industry is the education industry. right? Where you gain knowledge, whether it's in elementary school or K through 12, as we call it in the U.S., or in higher education, whatever it might be. We go there to gain knowledge, and that opens up greater possibilities for us, right? The more we know, the more the world is open to us and what those possibilities are. But knowledge is really the means to wisdom. Wisdom is the outcomes that we get from that knowledge. It's the practical things that allow us to decide what to do and what difference and impact we have in the world, right? So it's not just about being wise, it's about knowledge and wisdom. And then there's one more, one that the Old English proverb never thought of, and it's the most important one, and that's purpose and meaning. Everything in life has a purpose, and every human being in the world needs to have meaning in their lives. As Viktor Frankl, a psychologist that went through the Holocaust, and noticed that at the time of the Holocaust, when people were deprived of everything, right? They had no wealth, they had barely any clothing, they had not health or well-being, right? They couldn't gain any new knowledge or wisdom while there, and yet if they had meaning in their lives, they could survive and even thrive. But if they lacked meaning, they were dead, right? They were dead. So meaning is the most important thing that we need as human beings. We are meaning-making machines in that regard. And all of these, you may notice, they overlap, they have areas in common, and what is at the center, where they all come together, is in each one of these four spheres of transformation, as I call them, foster human flourishing. It's how we bring about human flourishing. There are as much spheres of flourishing as they are of transformation. So how can you foster human flourishing? By helping people have health and well-being, wealth and prosperity, knowledge and wisdom, and especially purpose and meaning. The first one of those is always the means to the end of the second one, right? Those are what are most important. When you think about transformations and what you're doing and helping them, people better flourish, recognize that the customer is the product. The customer is the product. In other words, the actual offering that you're selling is a changed person, right? You reach inside of people, and they change from the inside out. And with transformations, I like to call customers aspirants, right? They are aspirants because they have an aspiration. They find it difficult to achieve on their own, and they're coming to you to design the set of experiences by which they can transform, right? They are the product. And recognize all transformation is identity change. What you're doing is you're changing people's identity, again, from the inside out. You're helping them become who they want to become across many different factors and many different aspects of identity. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's not a minor thing. And there's a big fiduciary responsibility. You have a responsibility to your customers when you are mucking around on the inside and changing their identity. So it is about achieving these aspirations. Again, these are aspirants. The way I like to think about it is thinking about it as from-to statements. You know, go from sick to well, go from flabby to fit, going from working to retiring, whatever it might be. And there may be a generic aspiration that you have in your company, but you need to understand that every individual person is unique and has their own unique aspirations. You need to draw that out of them and then design the set of experiences that allows them to go from where they are today to who they want to become. Right? That's what aspirations are about. So for example, Heartland Health is a hospital system that I worked with in St. Joseph, Missouri in the United States. And they're a normal sort of hospital system, but with our work with them, they took on their meaningful purpose. Remember I talked about how important that meaningful purpose was? At Heartland Health, that meaningful purpose was live life well. Live life well. It wasn't just about healing people. They wanted every patient that came to Heartland Health to live life well, right? That's human flourishing is what that's talking about. Not only that, they wanted their employees to live life well so that out of that abundance, they could help their patients live life well. Not just the patients and their families. Not just the families, but the community in which they resided. They wanted collective flourishing of the entire community. So with this meaningful purpose of live life well, they actually changed the name of the company to Mosaic, and they're not in the healthcare business, they're in the life care business. And you can see how it changed how they view their buildings and the new things that they created. when they recognized that people were being transformed by the health and well-being experiences that they created. Their CEO, now retired, Mark Laney, always talked about how it's dreams and aspirations. And they live in us all. And they're going to help you achieve your dreams and aspirations. They're going to do it with a roadmap, a life plan. And they're going to be right there alongside with you on the journey. They're guiding you. Right? With Transformations, you guide the customer in achieving that aspiration. Let me show you what Mosaic Life Care is all about. Or not.
What could happen if we look at healthcare from a completely different perspective? If the experience was reimagined, reinvented, and re-engineered? What if the concept of healthcare became more about life care? Enter Mosaic Life Care, a reimagined, reinvented, re-engineered approach to healthcare. It's an approach that frames the doctor's office inside a vibrant life care center. It's a model that introduces you to new caregivers, like a life guide and life coach. And it's an experience that emphasizes customized comfort. Here at Mosaic, it's the physicians who lead us. But we follow a philosophy based on the heart, mind, and spirit. And we make distinctions between treating life, treating health, and treating illness. At the core of our approach is the life care model. And as part of it, we learn about your aspirations. We talk about health improvement and life improvement. And we help you achieve transformational change. Our method is unique, which is why we do things differently. Like offering you a customized life plan. Because doing things differently means understanding that we all have different goals. My life plan pairs you with a life coach, and together you work toward goals relating to not just health, but also lifestyle, career, finances, creativity, relationships, and spirituality. And while we like to focus on preventing illness, we're also experts at treating it. As members of the Mayo Clinic Care Network, we give our caregivers access to some of the most powerful medical resources in the world. Wellness is more than just being well. It's about living life well. Welcome to a new forward-thinking approach to healthcare. More than healthcare. Life care. Welcome to Mosaic Life Care.
And life care, as you can see, is about flourishing. Right? Again, for the patients, for the employees, for their family members, for the entire community. Now, there are various types of aspirations that people can have. You can see that in that video, in fact, how they're looking at various different aspects of it. I'm not going to go into details on this model, but recognize that depending on the degree of change, or the quality of change, whether it's one of degree or one of kind, whether it's changing some aspect of identity you already have or creating a new aspect of identity, and whether that is of a small scale or over a large scale, defines 4 different types of aspirations. When it's a small scale change in degree, it's really about refinement, refining some aspect of yourself that you have, that you want to be better in some way, that you want to grow in some way. Right? That's what refinement aspirations are about. When that becomes a very big change, then it's an ambition. Right? You have an ambition, and you're looking for people, for companies that can help you gain that ambition. Cultivation is a quality of change, is one of degree, is some new aspect of self that you want to take on, something that you've never done before, never been before, but it's of a small, minor nature. But then when it's of a major nature, then you've got something very different. And that's a major change, a large-scale change of difference in kind. The only decent word for it is metamorphosis. Right? Another big Greek word like eudaimonia, metamorphosis, a wholesale change. Think about how a butterfly changes or how a caterpillar changes into a butterfly. Right? It goes through that chrysalis. It's a completely changed entity when it comes out. The caterpillar knows nothing of the butterfly. And that's one of the things about metamorphosis. It changes who we are so much that we don't even necessarily recognize the person we used to be. You know, a classic example in philosophy and other places is having a baby. And having a baby, even though you've watched other people have baby, you've read books about it, until you have a baby yourself, right? That being a parent is unknown to you. And that includes the dads, not just the moms. Right? The research shows that dads' brains change just like the moms does. In some extent, it changes even more. But there are other metamorphic transformations that we have, whether it's getting a first job, becoming a manager, opening up a small mom and pop shop, turning that into a franchise, being an entrepreneur, retiring. All of these things are aspirations of metamorphosis. And they're always very difficult to achieve, because you don't know what the heck you're doing when it comes time to do that. But each one of these leads into different types of transformations as well. When you think about that refinement aspiration, what you need to do is enhance somebody, right? Turn them from that rough diamond into a polished diamond. Enhance who they are in some aspect of identity. With ambition, it's really to expand, to greatly expand who they are. Whether it's, if you're a golfer and you want to become a single-digit handicap golfer, right? It's a tremendous a set of skills that you need and capabilities to be able to do that. You're really expanding what you can do regarding it. With cultivation, it is an enrichment, that you're enriching people, provide them with some new aspect of identity, whether it's to garden or to enjoy wine or other aspects that you have. But again, with metamorphosis, it's very different. Metamorphosis is life-altering. You need to alter your customers. And it's the most difficult one to do, but it's also the most rewarding. There are probably more of these, of expanding, enhancing, and enriching transformations, but again, altering ones are the ones that are most important. So you think about which one of these types of transformations you want to play in. Could be all of them, could be one of them, could be somewhere in between. And recognize, though, when you do that, when you design a set of transformations that meet those, that helps your customers achieve those aspirations, that you are building that on top of experiences. Right? All these economic offerings are built on top of each other. And transformations are very closely intertwined with experiences. As human beings, we only ever change through the experiences that we have. As the old saying goes, we're all the product of our experiences. So you need to design experiences that transform people into becoming who they want to become. And there are various levels of experiences. At the bottom is memorable. Right? To be an experience as a distinct economic offering, as I'm defining it, you had to have created a memory. If you did not create a memory, it was not an experience. But many experiences go beyond that and are meaningful. Where memorable experiences engage who we are, meaningful experiences connect with who we are in a way that creates that meaning within us. But then some experiences rise to a higher level, and that I call a transporting experience. An experience that takes us out of ourselves. That an experience that is a peak experience that will regain euphoria. An experience that's a flow experience where we're so into what we're doing that all sense of time washes away. An experience that gives us awe, and particularly faced with God's creation. All of those are transporting experiences. But then the highest level, the one above all those, the ones that creates a distinct economic offering, is in fact transformative experiences. Right? These are the ones that change us. And it's not always one single life-transforming experience. It's often a set of experiences that are designed to help us achieve our aspirations. So what does it take to turn a memorable, a meaningful, or a transporting experience into a transformative one? It requires what I call encapsulation. Encapsulation is taking that core experience and encapsulating it inside of other activities. In particular, what you need to do is you need to have preparation. You need to prepare people for that experience, help them understand what they're going to undergo, prime them for the experience they're going to have, open them up to the possibilities that are there. Right? Preparing them for that experience. Then they have the experience, and after that, you have reflection, where you're asking them questions about their experience, about what was the highlight of the experience. Are there times when you felt like you really were open to something new, that you're perhaps even becoming something new? Are there aspects of this you want to take home with you to affect your life, to have an impact on your life? And then finally, there's integration. Integration is where you then work with them to integrate those experiences into their lives. If you have some great experience, you think your life is transformed, right, and you're a different person, but then that feeling sort of dissipates, and you stop acting the way you did then, right? Then you are no longer transformed. A true transformation requires that it be integrated into your life. But whatever experience you design, if you can encapsulate it in these three phases, right, then the chances that in fact is transformative goes up tremendously. In transformational travel, here's an example of that. The Transformational Travel Council came out with this journal, and they used the mnemonic path as a way to think about it. Right? When you go for travel and you want to be transformative, first you prepare. Right? You shape the impact of your journey before you ever go there. Then you have your adventure, the core experience inside of that encapsulation. Then you think, you reflect, you consider, discuss, and ponder. And then finally, they say it's about honor. Intentional transformation occurs when you honor your insights and integrate them into your lives. Right? So you have to do all of those. And it's a great example of that. So when you create those transformative experiences with the integration and with other things, it allows you to turn it into that distinct economic offering of transformations. The lower three are all experiences. Then you have the transformation level, and there's one more above that, and that is metamorphic transformations, those metamorphosis ones. Excuse me, because again, they are so distinct, or you're changing some aspect of core identity in there that they go a step beyond. It's still part of transformations, but you need to understand the great responsibility you have with that power to help people undergo metamorphosis and alter their lives. I call this the Delta model. The Delta, the Greek letter D, is the universal symbol for change and for transformations. And you can see how you can then use that Delta model to build atop all of these to design experiences that become transformations and perhaps even metamorphic transformations as well. When you create those transformations, you want to design them in three different phases. The first phase is diagnosis, right? So sort of like the medical term is, who is this person, what do they want to become, and where are they today? What is that from to statement of where they are today and what they want to become? Right? That's where diagnosis, and then that diagnosis allows you to design the set of experiences that'll help this individual customer, this aspirant, achieve his aspirations. Right? Then they undergo those set of encapsulated experiences, every one of them encapsulated like I talked about. Note, it's not just one monotonically increasing, going from here to your aspirations. You often have regress along with progress. You've got to be able to handle that. You've got to come alongside them in this journey. Again, the economic function of transformation is guide. You are the guide. You need to guide them along this journey and ensure that they get to the top, ensure that they achieve that aspiration. But then the job is not done. As with integration, you've got to have follow-through. And this is really encapsulation writ large, right? Preparation, encapsulated experiences, and then the follow-through, where you help ensure the transformation takes hold. Right? If I go to a fitness center and I become fit, right, I lose all that flab, and I get down to my goal weight, I get down to my muscle weight, I have the muscle tone that I want, but 3 months later again, it dissipates, it goes away. You weren't truly transformed. So how do you follow through? How do you stay alongside your customers? Be with them through that entire process. And often that can then lead to a new aspiration for something going beyond where we are today and back into the diagnosis phase as well. Explorer X is another transformational travel company. In fact, they call themselves travel designers, right? So it's another design aspect. They're travel designers. And what they do is that they have this opening call with you, right, where your journey begins. They call it a call to adventure. And on that opening call, they discuss with you what the possibilities are. And then if you want them to design your travel, they charge a $1,500 fee. Right? It's not for free. The diagnosis phase, right, isn't for free here. They're charging $1,500 for that. If you just take the plans and go do them yourselves, you can do that. Right? But then they can book everything for you as well. But then they're with you along their journey. They help you prepare for this with thinking about all the options and ideas that you have in designing it, and then preparing for your journey with a mindful travel toolkit and guide, right? So doing that preparation phase for it. Then they're on with you with your journey. They want you to travel like a hero, another mnemonic for humble, engaged, resilient, and open-minded. And then the journey ends, right? They say, or does it? Because they recognize the need for integration. That when your journey ends, you still need to integrate. So in that mindful travel toolkit and guide, they allow you to reflect on everything and integrate that into your lives, right? Perfectly following this encapsulated model and the 3 phases of transformation. And you may note there, how many of you are familiar with the hero's journey? Right? Many of you, more of you should be familiar with the hero's journey. It's the model that they were using there. It's from Joseph Campbell's book, The Man with 1,000 Faces. I actually don't recommend his book. If you want to know more about it, get Christopher Vogler's book, The Writer's Journey, right? The best resource on it I've seen. What I've done is take his work on how a hero goes from the ordinary world into the special world and then comes back transformed. Right? Hero's journey always transforms the person. So it's a great way to think about designing yours and creating a transformation journey. Right? Think about creating a transformation journey where they go from their ordinary world of living their life into a transformation world and comes out transformed. There are 4 phases to it that basically encapsulate everything or summarize everything I'm talking about. Right? They're living life, but then they have an aspiration. Right? They have an aspiration for something, and often they refuse that aspiration. They say, I don't have time for that. Or I don't think I could actually make that happen. Or so much is going on, right? They refuse it, but that's where the guide can really help them, right? They meet the guide. In the normal hero's journey, that guide is a wizard or a Jedi, right? All these different things. But here it's simply helping them understand, right, who they are today and what do they want to become, and I can be the one to help you. And key to that is gaining a commitment. It's not always in the same place every time with every journey, but you need your aspirants to commit because they are the ones that are changing themselves. Right? You're not changing them. You're just the guide. If they're not committed, it will not happen. Then you go through the experiences phase where you have that encapsulation. You have preparation for the experience. And then they start the experience, often with fits, right? It's very difficult at the beginning in particular, but again, there's things that happen that bring them down as well as take them up, and then you enter that crucible, right, from which they emerge transformed. It's like a chrysalis as well, right? Out of that crucible comes the transformation, the 3rd phase, where they transform. They become something new. But will it stick? Right? That's the question. And that's what the last phase is about. Part 4, integration, where they reflect on that experience, excuse me, they integrate it into their lives with your help, and then they have a higher level of flourishing. I recognize that. You are helping them become who they want to become. And every time they go on a transformation journey, they are flourishing at a higher level. You can think of it this way. If you bring this down here, and recognize that over a lifetime, they go on transformation journey after transformation journey. And they become higher and higher extent of flourishing. And you can be a part of that. You can be their guide in doing that. Right? Through the transformative experiences that you design and bring together to be able to create that journey. Right? For greater and greater and greater levels of flourishing. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is to recognize what business are you really in, and that you are what you charge for. Recognize that, excuse me, you are what you charge for. If you charge for undifferentiated stuff, you're in the commodities business. Right? You're the same as everybody else. If you charge for tangible things, you're in the goods business. If you charge for the activity you do or your people do, you're in the service business. But economically, you're in the experience business if and only if you charge for time. The time your customers spend with you. Experience design is the design of time. right? The design that they go through, the dramatic structure that they have that rises up to a climax and comes back down again. And you wouldn't imagine going to a sporting event or a concert or a play or a movie and not pay admission, not pay for your time, because you know that they are experiences. So every experience company should charge admission or charge a membership fee for their experiences. And finally, transformations. What do you charge for with transformations? You charge for the demonstrated outcomes your customers achieve. Inputs don't matter, only outcomes. And until you make your income dependent on your customers, your aspirants' outcomes, the chances they achieve those outcomes aren't going to be very high. Right? It's a catalytic mechanism for you to be able to do that. So for example, Gary Adamson is a gentleman who read our book, The Experience Economy, and decided to create a business he called Steward that would help transform companies into premier experience stagers. So he created an experience design place, and I became a partner with him in doing this, where we designed a set of experiences with encapsulation. I didn't have the name for it at the time, but it's really integrated in what we do. And you come up to the experience design place. It's at 10,000, or not 10,000, it's 7,000 feet above sea level in the Rocky Mountains in the US in Colorado. And you have a great experience, and we develop with you this experience plan. And then we help you implement it. We help you integrate it into your business. Heartland Health, that became Mosaic Life Care, was one of our clients at Steward. But what we do is we charge for outcomes with a transformation guarantee. The 25% of our fees are completely at the client's discretion. They can pay that last 25%. They can pay all of it or pay none of it based on, did we do what we said we were going to do? Did you get out of it what you wanted out of it? Did you achieve the transformation that you wanted? And over 15 years of being in business before the founders retired, only 2 companies had ever not paid at all. Right? Because it's a catalytic mechanism that caused us to do things differently in order to ensure that we got paid the full amount by ensuring that our clients, our aspirants, our explorers as we call them, got transformed. Or in government and education, Texas State Technical College in the state of Texas in the US was asked by the state along with all the other technical colleges if they could put the funding at risk based on the actual student outcomes. What they got paid for was what's called credit hours. In other words, a student pays tuition for a particular credit. They get extra funding from the state in order to be able to make that happen. And they got paid whether the student went to class, whether they learned anything in that class, whether they replied to anything they learned, whether they got a job based on anything they learned. And they wanted to change that around to be outcome-based funding. So they had 100% of their funding based on the outcomes that their students achieved. Because what the state of Texas wanted was productive citizens, right? Essentially people that paid taxes. So they figured out a formula, and over the first 10 years or so of doing business, Texas State's funding went up by 35% every year because of the outcomes. They changed everything that they did. In fact, they got so good at it that they offered a transformation guarantee to their students. That if their students went to Texas State Technical College, if they went to classes, if they graduated, and they did not get a job in their field within 4 months, they got their entire tuition fees back. Right, again, a catalytic mechanism for being able to do it differently, charging for the outcomes that their customers achieve. So this is the progression of economic value. Right? These are the possibilities for being designers and for thinking about what business are you really in. And let me say that there is no greater economic value that you can create. There is no bigger impact you can have on the world. There's no greater difference that you can make in the lives of individual human beings than to be in the transformation business and help people flourish. Thank you.